Welcome to episode 49 of Bible 180, 180 days between Genesis and Revelation. We are on Psalm 46. Psalm 46. A couple more days on the Psalms, then two on Proverbs, and then we'll get back to Solomon and the downfall of the kingdom of Israel. Let me just ask, do you ever have such a racing mind, like your brain is on a hamster wheel with two different hamsters going different directions, and you worry about things, you pray about things. By the end of the day, you try to figure out what you accomplished that day, and you just kind of feel lost. I came across an article that read like this. Recently, I was diagnosed with AAADD, age-activated attention deficit disorder, though it could also be called anxiety-activated attention deficit disorder. This is how it manifests itself. I decided to water my garden, and I turned on the hose in the driveway, and I looked over at my car and decided my car needs to be washed. As I started toward the garage, I noticed there's mail on the porch table that I brought in from the mailbox earlier in the day. I decided to go through the mail before I washed the car. I laid my keys down on the table, put the junk mail in a garbage can under the table, and noticed that the can is full. So I decided to put the bills back on the table and take out the garbage first. But then I think since I'm going to be near the mailbox when I take the garbage out anyway, I might as well pay the bills first. I take my checkbook off the table, and there's only one check left. My extra checks are in my desk on the study. So I go into the house to my desk where I find a can of Coke that I'd been drinking. I'd go to look for my checks, but first I have to push my Coke aside so I don't accident and knock it over, and I see that it's getting warm, so I decided to put it in the refrigerator to keep it cold. And as I head toward the kitchen with the Coke, a vase of flowers on the counter, they need to be watered. So down on the counter, I discover my reading glasses that I've been looking for all morning. Then I decided I better put them back on the desk. But first I'm going to water the flowers. I set my glasses down on the counter, fill the container with water, and suddenly I spot the TV remote. Somebody left it on the kitchen table. I realize that tonight when we go watch TV, I'll be looking for the remote, but I won't remember that it's on a table, so I decided to put it back in the den where it belongs. But first I'll water the flowers. I pour some water on the flowers, but quite a bit of it spilled on the floor, so I set the remote back on the table, get the towels and wipe up the spill, and then head down the hall, trying to remember what I was planning to do. At the end of the day, my car isn't washed, the bills aren't paid, there's a warm can of Coke sitting on the counter, the flowers don't have enough water, there's still only one check in my checkbook, I can't find the remote, I can't find my glasses, I don't remember what in the world I did with my car keys. Then when I try to figure out why nothing got done that day, I'm just baffled because I know I was busy all day long and I'm really tired. I realize this is a serious problem and I'll try to get some help for it, but first I have to go check my email. Does any of that describe anything about you? Can you relate to it in any kind of small way? If you can relate to that, then we need to talk about Psalm 46. There's a verse in Psalm 46 that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I am God. Be still. Rid your mind of worry. I know it's tough with so many things to worry about, but you can only rid your mind of worry if you begin by being still. Actually, Jesus tells us many times not to fret, not to worry. The word worry in Greek means to divide the mind. Dividing the mind, to worry, is the opposite of being still because worry divides the mind. Worry shifts our focus. It dilutes our solutions and makes it so that we can't think straight. Worry breeds anxiety. Worry brings about anxiety because it divides the mind so much that we can't even function. Worry gives us age-activated attention deficit disorder because worry and anxiety and dividing the mind means it's almost impossible to focus on just one thing And of course, there are many things for which our minds are divided. We start to think about one thing, and then another catastrophic thing comes into our mind, and then another, and all of a sudden our minds are in a mess and we can't think straight, and we're filled with worry and anxiety. And the last thing possible, it seems for us to do, is to be still. But when we are still, when we still our hearts, we can know that God is God. Part of the challenge in life is that life doesn't always go better on a gradual or rapid slope. Sometimes there's a lot of anxiety in our lives, politically, socially, families, whatever that might be. We might well feel like David when he said in Psalm 13, he said, "Lord, how long, O Lord, how long?" But if you know much about the Bible, or if you've listened up until this episode, you know that the people of God have always gone through periods of uncertainty and unfamiliarity. Noah went through it. It was called a flood. Moses went through it. It was called a desert experience. The people of Israel went through it. It was called the wandering in the wilderness. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went through it. It was called the fiery furnace. Daniel went through it. It was called the lion's den. Paul went through it. It was called his imprisonment in Rome. John went through it, and it was called Patmos. We all go through those difficult times. But when you know your Bible, if you've been listening so far, when you wake up in the morning and say it's going to be a great day, when you go to bed at night and think of 3 things for which you're grateful, you know that you can smile, and you can know that when God says, "Be still and know that I am God," you know, I hope by now, that you can begin to do that. And when we can be still, God can teach us something, because so many times we think we know all of the answers. We think we know exactly what to do. We think we have everything in life under control, only to realize that we often mess things up despite our best intentions, and that what we really need to do is be still and know that God is God. Because when we still our hearts, when we expel from our minds all of our anxiety, then I think, and only then, can we listen to God? Can we hear what God is speaking? When we are still, we can let God be God of our lives and of this world, and we can wait without grumbling and complaining, because God can guide us through without filling our lives with anxiety and fear. Be still and know that I am God. Now that verse comes from Psalm 46, and you notice in Psalm 26 that it's written as a song. A group of singers wrote Psalm 45, 46, and 48, which celebrate deliverance from a great foe. Psalm 46 was likely to have written when the Assyrian army invaded Jerusalem, and King Hezekiah delivered from them in a powerful way. These psalms here, 45, 46, 48, are psalms of deliverance. Second thing you know about Psalm 46, I'm going to read it for a while, is that in the Hebrew, it's called to the tune of Selah. Selah appears 3 times in verse 46. As I read it, I'll say that Selah. The word Selah comes from 2 Hebrew words. One is to praise and the other is to lift up. Maybe the singers of the song would pause to think, when they had sung these praises to God, to praise and lift up. In fact, the word Selah in Hebrew is an imperative, meaning it's something we're commanded to do. In the Septuagint, which we'll talk about in about 8 sessions, which is the earliest Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, it means intermission or interlude. The Amplified Version of the Bible, instead of we're using the word Selah, means pause and calmly think about this. Pause and calmly think about that. It's kind of like taking a pause, a pivot, and then having praise. Let me read Psalm 46 to you. It goes in this way. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble in tumult. Selah. Pause and think about this. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of that city. It shall not be moved. God will help it when the morning dawns. The nations are in an uproar. He utters his voice. The earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Pause and calmly think about this. Come, behold the works of the Lord. See what desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks a bow and shatters a spear. He burns the shields with fire. And then Psalm 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Pause and calmly think about this. So, in the first three verses, we're reminded that God is our creator, our judge, and our savior. In the midst of whatever we're feeling, God promises to be our refuge, a place of trust. Literally, in the Hebrew, means to flee to an impenetrable shelter. God promises to hide us in God's shelter. So Selah. Pause and think calmly about it. In verses 4 to 7, a stream making glad the city of God, because God promised shelter when we seek God. God will help us in the morning when the nations are in an uproar and the kingdoms totter. Selah, it says. Pause and think calmly about this. Then in verses 8 through 11, we're called to come and behold the works of God. Even in the midst of challenging time, we can count on God's presence, promise, and power. Even in the midst of whatever it is we personally are going through life, no matter how challenging it is, God is with us. Selah. Pause and calmly think about this. I'm reminded of a phrase I heard a long time ago. We become what we behold. We become what we behold. If you tell me what you're beholding, I'll tell you what you're becoming. In the midst of all kinds of difficult times, God is with us. Be still and know that I am God. Selah. Pause and think calmly about this. So there's all kinds of things in life that divert us away from knowing God, but what's so good is to just think about it being a great day. Be grateful for what happens. Put a smile on your face. Breathe, as early episodes we talk about. Breathe deeply. 6 deep breaths in, 6 deep breaths out. All kinds of stuff on the news or things happening in our lives. You know that you simply have to trust God. You simply need to be still and know that God is God. Make it a great day. Take it easy today. Take time to rest, to refresh, to recreate, and take time to be still and know that God is God. I look forward to being with you in the next episode. Until then, you take care. Bye-bye.